Hello, this is Pittsburgh Pat with Ryan Doyle from the Verdigris Table. How you doing, Ryan?
I am doing awesome this morning.
This is a recap of our session from last night, the 13th, the unlucky 13th of August. And yeah, there was some more character death. I think we're just going to name this spot Character Death with Ryan and Pat because it comes up. But here's the thing: we're playing a new adventure with low level, like level one 5e characters, and they're not very resilient. And we're in a salt marsh haunted house basement, and there there was a sign. To Ryan's credit, there was a door with a barred door, barred like to keep whatever was in from coming out, with a sign that said danger. And my character said, "Yeah, let's lift that. Let's do it. Let's get in that room." Not alone though. I mean, like there were other characters who were on my side.
It
Bert
was
was the only one
democratic.
there.
It was democratic.
Yeah, yeah. There was one dissenting vote, I think.
Yeah.
Well, there was an abstention and a dissenting vote, and there were two votes in favor, so we went for it. And it was the I said it was kind of like the classic scene from Big Trouble in Little China where Kurt Russell's character opens the door and there's a bunch of baddies in the room, and he closes the door real quick and says, "We may be trapped." So we weren't trapped, but we were definitely overwhelmed, and I couldn't get the door closed in time. So
You did try to close the door again,
yeah.
and it was a contested strength check. And on the modifiers, you definitely had a skeleton beat with your turtle ranger. But critical success, nat 20.
Yeah,
So he blew the door off the hinges, and that
yeah,
was it for that plan.
that door was not long no longer a door. It was a door, but it didn't function as a barrier. So I became the my character became the barrier because he's got this turtles have this ability where they can add +4 to their
Hmm.
uh AC. If nobody out there has played a turtle before, you can just kind of like get your shell, and then you're harder to hit. And so I was blocking the doorway, but the character is only 5. Can't remember if it was 5'2" or 5'6". It wasn't a big guy. He wasn't big enough to block the whole doorway, but he certainly tried, and died in the attempt. So
Hmm.
yeah, or well, actually, he like got out of the way of the door so he could make a because the round before that you were using a rule of what was it, -2 to hit through shooting through a character's square.
Yes, partial coverage, which I don't know if it's raw or optional, but it just makes sense to me.
Mhm.
It's in the DMG. I don't know if it's a variant or not, but yeah, for each character you're shooting a ranged attack through, that's some degree of cover.
Yeah, you got to shoot around somebody's head or arm or shoulder or
Hmm.
whatever, and or under their armpit. You have to like find the 5 hole, like it's like hockey, like you're there's the guys in the net, but like so you're actually doing, you're the guy that's trying to shoot past the goalie. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, but I think that's one of the reasons I like doing these videos is because these kinds of things come up. So DMs, players, they D&D, it has rules, but rules can be modified, right? So it's
Hmm.
not golf, where there's like every possible scenario has been thought of in advance and it's all perfectly balanced and everything, like every once in a while, you get a situation where there's a squirrel in the hole where the sprinkler head comes up and you got to make a ruling.
Yep.
So so that's what you do. And that's awesome. And I think that was great. And there were a couple times when that happened. There was another incident where you kind of made a ruling. There was a fog cloud in the cave, and so you had a pretty interesting way of actually visually doing that and then conceptually doing that. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, so first off, I double check myself a lot now because I'm running different systems on different nights, and I'm looking at the new 2024 stuff and comparing it to the UA and comparing it to base 5e. So like, my brain is rattled.
Yeah, there's a lot of
So
stuff
I'm going to
there.
toot my own horn. I was right in my ruling, but
Cool.
I double check myself a lot. And even if I'm pretty confident, right? Like I think I said, I'm 95% sure this is right, which is me not saying I'm 100% right. Um, I like to check things out loud when a player maybe doesn't understand all of the effects of like exactly how a thing works, especially a spell. Um,
Right. So,
because blinding everybody in the room changes everything for everybody. It's not just
right.
I think you didn't cast blindness on a target. He cast fog cloud in a room. He thought it was half the size, which geometry in D&D can be confusing. So it's like, no, that's a radius, right? So like,
20-foot radius. So it's
and again,
40-foot
I'll have the
diameter
player look
sphere.
up their stuff so it implants in their mind a little bit stronger than if I just tell them if I do it for them,
Right.
it doesn't stick the same way as if we talk about it and they confirm it for themselves.
No, that's a
Um,
good point. And actually, I mean, I've got the teaching case going to come up again. So like
mm,
I'm like, okay, sorting this out. In fact, tomorrow night we playing D&D and Adventure League with a young lady who's about 10, 11 years old. And that's about the age of the students that I teach. And so she's going to run. So it's going to be
awesome.
really fun. I hope she says she's on standby, but I hope she runs because that way I can see how someone of that age prepares as a DM. And so that will inform me when I teach my students. I think I'll learn a lot tomorrow night.
Yeah,
But
and it's a controversial take. You don't hear it a lot. A lot of DMs are trying to make things run as smoothly as possible, and baseline advice is make ruling, move on, talk about it after the fact, just keep the game
right.
moving. But I find like cumulatively over time, talking about the thing when it comes up, you talk about it once, and now you know it, and then now the next time fog cloud gets cast, everybody at the table is aware of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Well, it's the difference
Um,
between like 1970s NFL football and today, So like in the in the 1970s, you were just like, get up, wipe some dirt in your blood and like let's get back to the play. But now it's like everything stops, go to 5 State Farm commercials, and like while the officials sort it out. I mean, it's not. I'm trying to make a
yeah,
joke,
but I mean,
but what we're
it's a
doing is
spectrum.
but
Yeah.
it's yeah, but those are the 2 points on the spectrum. But where we
Hmm.
are, and I do this now in Adventure League too, because I was of that opinion where I put a pressure on, and it was totally self-inflicted. I put pressure on myself, thinking these these players want a story. They want action now, 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 now. It's got to be a Michael Bay film. It's got to be like all the time stimulus. But honestly, like it's okay to take a break once an hour or even every, you know what I mean? Just like so people can refresh their drinks and dispose of the other drinks that they just had and like just like walk around. I mean it's healthy to get up and walk around every hour, so not a problem if there's a situation where you need to clarify a rule. You just like call timeout and then everybody like comes back fresh with a new plan. And a lot of times I think when I'm doing Adventure League especially, I've got a lot of new players and they want time to catch their breath too and see what they're going to do on their next turn. So it gives them, and then it also gives the a little bit of the social aspect a chance to like, you know, happen. So now the players can talk to each other as people instead of characters while things are going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on at the table. It's not just about the adventure sometimes. It's about what
Yeah,
else is going on in the room.
it's very interesting. Like running in a game shop taught me that. And when I first started, because I mean, maybe it's been 3 years now, but this game that I'm running is my first like game in a public space where there's like not frequent, but there are interruptions, right?
Mhm.
People will
Sure.
walk up to the table and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Or
Sure.
like someone will walk in that you haven't seen in months, and you're like, "Oh, hey," which like didn't happen in my living room, doesn't happen in an online game the same way. So it did for a while. It would bother me, it would irritate me. It was minor, but it'd be like, "Oh, fuck, like I'm losing the drive, I'm losing the story."
Right.
But it's inevitable, and it's like, okay, this is a different version of this experience, and it's nice. And like I can go, he's got a coffee bar now. It's just like,
Yeah.
all right, especially as the DM, like I got to think about what's going on, or I'm gonna leave the table, like you guys have to think about what's going on. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
get a cup of coffee or whatever.
That's right. No, that's funny you mentioned that. So the cafe is open now at the local game store that we go to, and it's coincidentally I was watching a stand-up comedy dry bar guy, and he was really funny. He was kind of like, you know, he was doing this bit about like he says I got into a bar fight. He says I know I don't look like the kind of guy that gets into a bar fight. He says I look more like the kind of guy who has a verbal dispute in a game store cafe.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
said, which I have. He said, because either you read the instructions or you didn't. Don't say you read the instructions and you didn't read the instructions, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I was thinking to myself that joke landed way too close to home,
Yeah.
like
That's a very specific. Yeah, and I mean, what it comes down to, so like I should say, I turn that off sometimes, right?
yeah,
Like if it's a big climactic moment, if I, sometimes you want to keep it moving, right? That's
yeah,
not my default
yeah, yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
but like I do turn that on sometimes.
yeah.
And occasionally, like I'll make a ruling wrong, or it's controversial, right? Like in my Thursday night, my Wednesday night game is pretty high level now, and someone got
Mm,
hit with the finger of death, and they dropped, and like
mm,
as written, like now you're a zombie next round. And that player justifiably was like, well, do I make death saves or not? And like we legit have to go to Jeremy Crawford's Twitter to find an answer, and I have to
mm.
decide if I agree with it or not. Because like that, I don't care if he wrote the game; it's on Twitter. It's not canon, especially Twitter these days.
Right?
um, but you know, you are a fallible human being, and pretending that you're not creates a whole lot of stress that
Yeah,
you already have enough stress running the game. You don't need to
yeah.
pretend to be perfect in every
No,
aspect. Yeah.
yeah, that's well, I mean, that's a level of maturity I mean, that's a life lesson, It's like,
Yes.
being able to admit when I'm wrong immediately, the more immediately I can do it, the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's
And
you
being
go,
open to
yeah,
being wrong. And I think, yeah, it's
yeah,
something that I had to like learn myself the hard way. And I think in like nerd circles, I think it's less prevalent now than when we were growing up. But like that was like knowledge was ego was like how you flexed on people.
sure,
So like it's still, I
sure,
mean, it's still a part of it. Oh, you like Star Wars, name 17 Jedi or whatever
right,
that's still
right.
in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how much can you bench? Like
Exactly.
it's a literally a benchmark,
It's the nerd flex, and and it comes from insecurity.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. See, it could be a demonstration of excellence. It's like, you know, this is my favorite pinball machine. Let's do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
thing. But
There's
you're
different,
right.
yes.
But you're right. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it comes from insecurity. The
But no,
thing is,
I mean, it's cool. Like mastery of a thing is one thing, right?
yeah,
But I feel like if you're at that level,
yeah,
you don't need anybody else to know, right? You go down to people at your level, you're playing professional pinball or whatever, then like, yeah, cool. You're playing Olympic level pinball,
yeah,
then
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
flex. But
Did you ever see the documentary King of Kong?
King of Kong,
It's
don't
about
think so.
competitive Donkey Kong players.
Oh, oh, oh,
And
oh, huh.
it's this tiny little subculture, and like there are these two dudes that are totally different. One's a father, family of father of two, married suburban guy, has a machine in his garage, blah blah blah. Another guy's like single, younger, flashy, like, and yeah, it's a real fun conflict of
Hmm, hmm.
wills, and you can see there's a couple different motivations going on there. you know one guy's kind of trying to impress his kids, but also like he's got this like obsession, and the
Yeah.
other guy's like doing it for the ladies, trying to
I
impress the
mean, if it's working
ladies.
for you,
If
no
that's
judgments.
a thing,
And I'll tell you what, if it's work, if you meet a woman who's like, you're the best at Donkey Kong, like, yes, I want to continue this conversation, then like, good, yeah, awesome. She might be a
yeah,
keeper.
that's a unicorn right there,
Yeah.
man. That's a unicorn and a leprechaun all in one.
Oh,
I, I
leprechaun sounds bad though.
leprechaun is pretty fun. That's funny. We should invent that animal. So yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like I think it happens the other way. I don't know. It happened for me the other way, where like in spite of my nerdiness, my spouse decided like, okay, well,
Oh,
this is what this guy's into. I'm gonna either have to get on board with this or I'm gonna be fighting this my whole life. So I'm gonna get on board with it to some degree. And so she's even come to a couple of D&D sessions, which is nice.
yeah, I mean, I met her at a gaming convention,
Yeah,
so good on
so
her.
it works. So yeah, so back to the campaign though. Yeah, so we got killed. There are two party members dropped, right? So the turtle can't take much. He had like 12 hit points. Took a 7. Took another one that cleaned up his remaining 5 hit points, and then the artificer, really cool character too, which was a shame because
Yes.
not to make things more confusing, but we have another player at the table named, we call him Patrick, just to distinguish him from me, and as opposed to Pat. And so Patrick's character sounded really awesome. What was his race? I forget.
Oh,
Well, he
I
was
don't
an
quite remember. He was
artificer.
artificer and he was like a natural. It was all like wood and rope. He got real
Yeah.
descriptive with all of his abilities. He like
Oh,
reflavored his cantrip of like
yeah, he had some kind of like bristling like thing that came out with multiple turrets or whatever
yeah.
it sounded like. I was recreating creating my new character while he was talking about it, so I missed half of it, but it sounded awesome and he really puts a lot of thought into it. And I felt bad because my character goes down first. Now it's domino effect. So his character goes down and it sounded like he was more invested in that character than I was in mine.
I
And
think I think part of what's happening or what happened was you guys were playing an MMO style. You're
yeah,
like, all right, I'm the tank, so I'm going to stand in the front and bottleneck this stuff.
yeah,
And like spatially, it didn't work out a couple times, right? Like you bottlenecked each other, right? Like I'm
yeah.
gonna block the bad guys, and then the people in the back end, like I don't, you weren't. It wasn't a cohesive group, and especially at low levels, strategy comes into play much more.
We had a ranger. The turtle was a ranger. We had the artificer we just mentioned. We had a warlock and or no, I'm sorry, sorcerer.
Hmm.
And then we had
You have a druid.
druid. So there's no tank.
No, I mean the druid doesn't really have wild shape yet, and it's
No.
so I bumped you guys up to level 2 because you like pretty much made it XP budget wise. The adventure was almost like milestone wise, you were pretty darn close. And like you went back to town. I was like, all right, you're level 2. Let's do it.
So how did the druid and the sorcerer survive that encounter? They just
Keeping it ranged and then like leaving's an option. Leaving is always an
so
option.
they ran.
They bounced. Yeah, they
Okay,
stayed
gotcha.
out, which I mean is part of the reason you guys dropped, I think, is that they were, 30 feet away from the fight
Yeah.
and you were in the front.
Yeah.
And that makes sense some of the time. But it makes sense. It's how you play a lot of games, a lot of video games in particular. So I think that's like the default assumption of like it's a formation, right? But if it's the only
Well,
play you run, it's
right.
situational. Sometimes it's not going to work out well.
Well, that's a good point because a lot of people are going to be coming from Baldur's Gate 3 and they're going to be
Mhm.
playing D&D and there's a difference,
There's a
Like there's a
difference.
big difference. So yeah, so that's interesting. And also you don't know what other players are going to do. So what you think might make sense tactically um is not always you're thinking like, well, I'm going to take my turn. Then obviously, like the rogue is going to like flank and sneak attack. I mean, that's
Right.
just obvious. And
Right.
then the rogue decides to hide and hold an action for the next round, and then all of a sudden your cognitive dissonance. Wait, that's not the way to do it. And then but that's what makes it fun because no plan. Even if you had a plan going in, it doesn't survive contact with the enemy, right?
Right.
So that's what's fun.
And you did trip an alarm. And the
Yeah,
second time you knew it was there. So like they knew the smugglers in the basement knew you were coming both times. And the second
yeah,
time they knew that you had like killed a bunch of them. You saw that they killed the things that had killed you. So like the
yeah.
the signs were there that there was like tough stuff coming up. They had like cleaned up after your mess. They had killed the things that killed
So
you.
we softened them up for him, and then they took them out.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was the thing. Like at one point, I was trying to be funny. I do that often. I don't know if it's received that way. So I
It,
like
it is. I'll show you. Yeah.
okay, good.
We have
So
fun.
because I at one point I turned around that we set off the alarm, and the alarm was basically "Welcome to your doom,"
Yeah.
right? So and it was this like ringing a doorbell, and so at one point I turned to somebody and said, "You guys don't have detect magic, or like, did you guys do like anything to prepare to come to this place? Like,
Which I think, which was like, I think a funny and in character. Like, you guys have already
yeah,
been here. Like, you didn't
I
like
just got hired
think
by
about the
these
magic
guys.
mouth situation. What happened to the last? What happened to the guy I replaced again?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. Is that him on the floor, that pile of bones? Is that his backpack? So that was the thing that was funny. I thought we when Bird's character, the sorcerer walks into, and he's the charismatic guy. So we're in the bar and the tavern, and he is going to recruit the new characters. So that's how we get the new characters in after they died. We roll new characters. And so the artificer, the guy who's playing the artificer, Patrick, he decides, well, I'm going to get as many hit points as I can,
Yeah.
basically. So he's going to be a paladin, and I thought that too, but I thought that was too reactive, and I thought, you know what, we're going to be playing new 5e rules pretty soon if we keep these characters alive. So I'm going to play what I want to play and investigate, which I want to, play. I love rogues and bards, so I figured I'll go with a rogue. So I just went with a basic rogue, and then so the paladin clanks up to the recruiting character, the sorcerer, and says, "Yeah, I'll join the party." And so I wanted to roll a stealth check, and then so I just kind of like suddenly appear at his arm, and said, "I heard you guys are gonna do something here. You guys." So and then when he hands when he comes to shake my hand and say welcome aboard, I hand him his purse and did a
Hmm.
sleight of hand check and just hand him his own coins. And I thought that was a nice little flavor moment. So that's a classic rogue
I
kind of
hope we
thing.
pass the audition.
Yeah, exactly. There was an old cartoon where there's this guy interviewing at the CIA, and he the interviewer has his resume in a piece of paper, and he says, "Hey, wait a minute, this is my resume." Oh, very good.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's how he
mm,
gets the job.
mm.
So that kind of thing. Demonstrate your talent. That's your interview process. I don't know if that would work in real life. I
I
haven't
guess it depends
interviewed
on the
for a
job.
job in a long time, so we'll
Yeah.
have to find out.
So
Maybe
yeah,
I'll.
so the paladin dropped because the paladin runs into the room and nobody else does.
Yeah, even the paladin drops. So like, okay, just for the audience's sake, this is how Ryan runs a campaign, right? So like there's lethality here. There is cost. This is not Adventure League. I wouldn't even dream of killing a character in Adventure League. So like, because there are new players. I don't know if their psyche's fragile, but like, come into this knowing that there are stakes there.
Yeah.
And that makes it fun, I think.
And I do that like I'm not like I'm gonna kill these guys tonight.
No, 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 no. It's
I
not
roll. I
vindictive.
haven't used a dungeon master screen in a while. I roll in the open. So it's not I run a deadly game that I hope doesn't feel very antagonistic because the dice are doing this. Like the dice are making the choices. I am not actively and like even sometimes where there's like edge cases, like okay, I'm not exactly sure how like tactical this particular grunt would be or something, like I'll let the dice make those decisions as well.
Sure.
I try to get as objective as possible so that I can come around and be like, well, you could do this or that or that.
Yeah, I mean, at one point you had a hobgoblin who had a choice on who to attack, and so you rolled to see who he was going to attack.
Yeah, and he didn't get his like not pack tactics. He didn't get his martial. They have like sneak attack essentially. So like there was
Right,
a round where they weren't getting that.
right.
But then the it was like it was a 5-on-1. And okay, I don't care what your AC is. Eventually,
Oh,
I
yeah.
get to roll D20 10 times. One of them's gonna hit. And it was the hobgoblin with the sneak attack. I think he maybe had been softened up. So he dropped.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so
and
he's
then yeah,
making death saves
and then
now
the
with his new
sorcerer
character.
casts fog cloud because he had a plan, like you were saying, he had a plan of what like the next three moves were, but you're only playing one character, so unless
Mhm.
there's a lot of communication, it
Mhm.
doesn't. So like, all right, now this room is a black box. Everyone in this room is blind. You're blind looking into it. Pick a square to
Oh,
attack.
right. So that's the thing. So we skipped over that, but like, and we got back to it. But like, yeah. So he cast fog cloud. now we have to look up fog cloud, and it says essentially everybody's blind. So now we got to look up the blindness condition. So the blindness condition says that like if you're being attacked, the attacker has disadvantage. If you're attacking, you have disadvantage, right? So, or it's it was crazy. So that's where another place where we needed the ruling, because you got a guy who's in the fog who's attacking, you got people shooting arrows into the fog, and then you have, it was
And that's what, like, I knew how that all worked, and I just wanted to make sure everybody else knew how all that worked before we're like, all right, this room is now filled with opaque fog.
right. And we're playing
Um,
in person, so we're not like online where you
yeah.
have all these Roll20 like beautiful little, like, press a button, here's a fog area. So got a map with hexes on it, you're drawn with a marker, and the little figures. Mike brings all these absolutely wonderful hand painted little figures, and they're all in the room. And so you just put a piece of paper over top of the figures.
Yeah, so what I've done in the past is like clear the board, right? Like, all right, we're theater of the mind now. But there was a PC in that mix, and the druid was going to cast Healing Word. And you can't cast it on a target you can't see, you know? And you can't attack targets you can't see. So like it was an interesting problem to run fairly.
Yeah,
Because to like I don't love, like, I trust the players not to meta, but subconsciously, if you know where the guy is, and I'm like, well, you have to pick a square, then like you either have to purposefully decide to miss or choose the right square. So like
oh
I have to do some. There has to be some intervention to make this a black box. Now that
yeah,
like once they moved, right? I left it until when it was not their turn. Before it was their turn, it was open. And then once it becomes their turn, like I showed you one of them moving
yeah,
because like maybe you're aware of like because he was yelling when he was doing it.
right,
And then it's like, okay, who knows what's going on? But now there's players acting in that space, so it gets very, very tricky
sure,
to portray that. And actually, so I let dice decide what happened in there because there are hobgoblins who don't speak common, like canonically. They only speak goblin. The wizard knows a few words of goblin and is ordering them around. They don't know what's going on and kind of don't care.
yeah, right.
And I think the hobgoblin took out two of the bandits because it's just like kind of swinging wildly. Um,
Yeah, we heard some death, and then
he took out one. I think you guys got one.
yeah, I think I shot. You said
Yeah, and
something
you hit
happened
like the
when I
wrong.
shot
You,
him,
you shot at the wizard, and you actually hit one of the grunts.
which makes sense because the wizard would put a grunt in between him and
Yeah,
the
he's
door.
he's playing
He's not
smart.
he's not
Yeah,
stupid, but he's yelling at his minions, like, you fools. That was his tagline. So I was like, you fools. And so I tried to do a performance check to like try to confuse his minions, but also like it ended up turning out that like he ends up saying, "Are you making fun of me?" So like it betrays his location now. So a little bit. So so I thought it's had a double purpose. That was fun.
yeah. No, it was smart play once the shit hit the fan. And yeah, the druid ran in, found like knew the the paladin that was at 0 HP is the one thing that's not moving, and he was along the wall. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can
You just
you can
put
get there
your
pretty
left
easy.
hand
You
on the
know where
wall
he
and
is, and you have
yeah,
like physical contact with the wall to get there.
right.
And then woke him up. He wakes up blinded with this like, and the druid's like this beautiful elf woman, and she's got
She's
celestial
glowing.
form on, so she looks like the paladin thinks he's going to heaven.
That was awesome.
And he's like, wake up, we're out of
Yeah.
here.
Come with me if you want to live.
Basically, yeah. And
So
he
yeah,
extracted himself.
yeah, she looks like an angel, and she's surrounded by clouds. That was fantastic
Yeah.
moment. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun yesterday. I thought that was great. And then that's where we kind of broke. And then yeah,
Yeah. There's
good
always a lot of
stuff.
uncertainty when you're like, all right, make your third character in 2 sessions. Like,
Well,
you coming
that's
back next week?
I was thinking about that. So watch the video where Ryan and I and others, Ryan takes others to use his compendium, and yeah, and put a link to Ryan's book. Ryan's written a book, and his character creation is astounding. It's really great and very fleshed out and fun to do. So yeah, I'll be doing a couple. I'll come with 3 characters next time, so it'll be fun. All right, well, this has
Yeah.
been it's been great talking to you. So we'll look forward to doing this again next week. I hope everybody out there is enjoying these sessions. I enjoy them. I learn a lot from them. So hope it's serving its purpose, which is to inform and entertain and just have fun with your D&D buddies. So
That's the point.
yep. See you guys on the next one.
Bye, everybody.